At first, nothing feels wrong. A fully loaded truck is moving steadily down the highway. The engine is smooth, the RPM is stable. The sound is familiar, deep, controlled, predictable. The driver's foot is lightly on the throttle. The turbo is doing its job, quietly compressing air, feeding the engine exactly what it needs. Everything is working the way it should. This is the kind of moment drivers trust. Long, straight road, constant speed, no warning lights, no strange noises. Just a machine doing what it was built to do. But here's the part most people never realize. Inside the engine, something can already be going wrong, and there is no sign of it from behind the wheel. No vibration, no alert, no visible failure. Just a tiny, invisible change that hasn't made itself known yet. And the dangerous part? By the time it does, it's already too late to stop it. It starts in one of the most overlooked places in the entire system, the turbocharger. At high speeds, the turbo spins incredibly fast, tens of thousands of rotations per minute. To survive that, it depends on a constant flow of engine oil for lubrication. That oil doesn't just reduce friction, it keeps the entire system stable. But over time, something small begins to wear. A seal. Not a major component, not something drivers ever think about. Just a thin barrier, designed to keep oil where it belongs. And slowly, almost invisibly, it begins to fail. At first, nothing changes. The engine still runs perfectly. Power feels normal. No smoke, no noise. But inside the turbo, tiny amounts of oil start leaking past the seal and entering the airflow. Still, nothing seems wrong, because the engine doesn't reject it, it accepts it. And that's where the real problem begins. To understand what happens next, you have to understand how a diesel engine actually works. Unlike gasoline engines, a diesel engine doesn't rely on spark plugs. It compresses air and injects fuel into that compressed air. That's what creates combustion. But here's the key detail most people don't think about. A diesel engine doesn't actually care where the fuel comes from. If something burns and it enters the combustion chamber with air, the engine will use it. And engine oil, under the right conditions, burns. So when oil from the turbo leak enters the intake system, it mixes with the air, travels into the cylinders, and starts acting like fuel. Uncontrolled fuel. Fuel that isn't regulated by the injectors. Fuel that isn't controlled by the throttle. At first, it's such a small amount that nothing changes. But it doesn't stay small. Because the faster the engine runs, the faster the turbo spins. And the faster the turbo spins, the more oil leaks into the system. Which means the engine is now feeding itself. And slowly, that feedback loop begins to build. At some point, the driver notices something strange. The RPM is slightly higher than expected. Maybe just a small increase at first, easy to ignore. Then it happens again. The truck starts pulling harder, even without pressing the accelerator. So the driver lifts off the pedal, but the speed doesn't drop. In fact, it keeps rising. Now there's confusion, because this isn't how engines behave. No input should mean less power, but here, the opposite is happening. The engine is accelerating on its own. Inside, the process is accelerating faster than the driver realizes. More RPM, more turbo speed. More turbo speed, more oil entering the intake. More oil, more uncontrolled combustion. And that leads to even higher RPM. It's no longer a controlled system, it's a loop, a dangerous one. The driver might try to reduce speed, shift gears, apply brakes, but none of that touches the real problem, because the source of power is no longer the fuel pedal. This is the moment everything changes. The driver turns off the ignition. Normally, that should end everything instantly. Fuel injection stops, combustion stops. The engine shuts down. But not this time. The engine keeps running. And not just running, it starts screaming. RPM climbs aggressively now, faster than before, because the engine isn't relying on injected diesel anymore. It's feeding entirely on oil. And as long as air is entering the system and oil continues leaking in, there is nothing to stop combustion. No switch, no button, no electronic control. The engine has become independent, completely disconnected from the driver. Inside, the stress is reaching extreme levels. The turbo is spinning beyond safe limits. The pistons are moving faster than designed. Valves are struggling to keep up. This is no longer operation. This is mechanical survival, seconds away from failure. At extreme RPM, engines don't fail gently. They break violently. Metal components expand under heat and stress. Clearances disappear. Friction skyrockets. Valves begin to float, losing synchronization with the pistons. The turbo can shatter under rotational force. Internal parts start colliding. And then, something gives. It could be a piston, a connecting rod, the turbo itself. But when it happens, it's immediate. A loud mechanical rupture, a sudden release of pressure, thick smoke pouring out. The engine doesn't slow down, it collapses. What was once a controlled system is now a destroyed assembly of metal, all caused by something that started with a tiny, invisible leak. Here's the part that changes everything. This wasn't just a failure. It was a system behaving exactly as it was designed to. A diesel engine will burn anything that can combust under compression. It doesn't question the source. It doesn't verify the input. So when engine oil enters the system, it becomes fuel. And once that fuel source is no longer controlled, the engine becomes self-sustaining. That's why shutting off the ignition doesn't work, because ignition isn't required. That's why pressing the brakes doesn't solve it, because the engine is generating its own power. The only way to stop it is to cut off air or physically stall the engine. But by the time most drivers realize what's happening, they're already seconds away from total failure. And that's the hidden truth. This isn't a random disaster. It's a chain reaction built on simple physics, triggered by something almost invisible. A system that turns against itself, not because it's broken, but because it keeps working. And once it starts, it doesn't stop until there's nothing left to destroy. If you look at trucks the same way again, you'll realize something most people never see. Sometimes, the most dangerous failures are the ones that feel completely normal, right until the end.